Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on the largest war chest of cash any company has ever seen, to the tune of now $347.7 billion. And I get we're used to tossing the word trillion around a lot, but to put this into perspective, the US Federal Reserve currently holds $195.3 billion in US Treasury bills. In other words, Berkshire has a bigger T balance to the degree of 56%. But the question you have to ask is, why are they sitting on so much cash and why now? Well, this might likely be to three different reasons. First, they don't actually see any attractive deals to unload that cash into. Or two, because they might be preparing for more lows in the stock market. Maybe we have some on the horizon. And the third and final reason, which many have been speculating, is that Berkshire is aiming to slowly pull out of the US stock market without causing a panic or getting every other company to move alongside them, because then there wouldn't be no buyers. And they want to move that working capital into other currencies. In other words, they would deploy or sell their US dollars to hold other things. Now, at their latest shareholder meeting, which was May 3rd, Warren Buffett actually got a standing ovation. Let's have a listen. He's truly one of the greatest investors of all time, and it's very hard to argue against it. The Oracle of Omaha seems to get most things right when it comes to the world of investing. And the reality is he doesn't have to get everything right. He just has to get a few things right really big. Well, recently, Warren Buffett just shared in their latest meeting just yesterday that it might be a good idea to own a lot of other currencies besides the US dollar. Yet that's mostly what they're holding. Is this a hint that they're going to buy crypto? Has Buffett truly flipped on his position to cryptocurrencies, where he used to be a staunch opponent? But it's hard to argue against Bitcoin and the blockchain. So this might have actually changed. And what really shocked people at this shareholder meeting was the fact that he is now stepping down as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway at the end of the year, and Greg Abel is set to take his place. But what's his stance on crypto, especially when they're sitting on this much cash? So although nobody saw it coming, it is understandable given that he's 94 years old. His days of skipping into the office are now over. So while everyone is also worried about the market, it's also possible and potential that the bottom is already in for the crypto market, but maybe not the stock market, as the great decoupling continues to occur. So if Berkshire Hathaway did end up adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet, this would send signals to the market that Bitcoin is a currency of the future, or at least a hedge against reckless spending and governments and fiat worldwide, and that crypto will continue trending to the upside. The amount of major investors that deeply respect Buffett and his approach to investing will follow, and their moves would likely create an inflow of capital like we've never seen in the crypto market before. This would have a global ripple effect and would likely cause some of the largest cryptos like XRP, Solana, Dogecoin, and Chainlink to fly high on that news alone, alongside a steady stream of inflows in capital. In other words, what happens next with Berkshire Hathaway actually matters, especially with a war chest of cash the size that they have. And where the new incoming CEO, Greg Abel, stands on all of these issues in cryptos will make a world of difference, as he is going to oversee where they deploy that capital. Now, we're going to uncover this in this article directly from the Wall Street Journal, as well as a short video alongside the current price action on Bitcoin and the cryptos we mentioned in the title of this video, to see if we can get clues about what happens next. Also, each Sunday, we are announcing one winner where we give away $100 worth of XRP. And all you need to do in order to enter this giveaway every single week is head on over to X or Twitter, follow the Bull Runners HQ account and then go to the pinned post where we show you step by step. First, you've got to like the post, then comment XRP below, and finally sign up to become a partner, or I should say a user, over at Blowfin. Then when you want to find out who the weekly winner is, you actually can find out through our daily email newsletter. You can just come over here to subscribe, bullrunners.com/altcoin secrets. And this is basically a free ebook that shares 23 secrets to helping you become a crypto millionaire. This is actually where we're going to announce each week's winner. So you have to be there in order to actually claim if you win. But yes, this is 100% real. Every single Sunday, as of today, for example, we're announcing one of our winners, and we're going to be doing this every single week. So you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by simply going to Bull Runners HQ on Twitter, following the steps in the pinned post, entering, and seeing if you win. And as always, my friend, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PAULIEDEFI. This is arguably one of the most important pieces of news that we're going to cover that could potentially really affect the entire stock market and crypto market. When we're talking one company, and arguably now one CEO that is incoming, is going to be in control of the largest cash position in history. They hold more treasury bills than the actual US Fed. The Federal Reserve holds less than Berkshire Hathaway, which is absolutely insane. And if you look at the incline over the years, going back to March of 2023, when Berkshire Hathaway was sitting on, right where my little mouse pointer is, about $125 billion worth of cash. They've increased their cash position into the new stock market highs to the tune of $348 billion, which is absolutely insane. So they've been using all of this strength in the United States stock market to sell and unload all of their positions in companies that are arguably well overvalued. Now, I'm not someone that only looks at valuations, because valuations can continue to climb even though technically they're overbought for a long period of time. And that's exactly what's happened, right? We saw the market when we thought it was going to crash in 2023, but instead it continued rallying through 2024. And here we are in 2025 with one of the weakest starts for a year in the start of a presidential 100-day period. But the real question we have to ask is, why are they selling at record paces? Is it truly because they're really trying to take that cash position and move it into other currencies other than the US dollar, which is exactly what Warren Buffett said on their May 3rd shareholder meeting? Or is it simply because they see a stock market crash on the horizon? Now, the reality is I've covered this at length on the channel. At the end of the day, if the entire stock market crashes, it is likely that the crypto market is going to crash as well. But for whatever reason, while stocks have consistently been getting slammed or hurt or hammered into the dirt, Bitcoin, from a weekly time frame, again, I'm on a weekly right here, you can see that over the last 4 weeks, not only put in its low at about $74,000 right here, but is actually currently putting in 4 straight weeks of uptrend, and has broke for new highs above that $88,900 range. Either way, it's extremely important to pay attention to what Berkshire Hathaway does, because they seem to be one of the only companies that consistently navigates these volatile markets over decades. Okay, so you can't just ignore someone like Warren Buffett, because right now they have repurchased $0 worth of stock in Q1 of 2025. So this totally makes sense why the Wall Street Journal would write an article basically stating why there will never be another Warren Buffett. This man is truly obsessed with the stock market. As a later writer called the great 17th century philosopher Baruch Spinoza the God-intoxicated man, a man who was intoxicated with thoughts of God, while Buffett is the stock-intoxicated man. All he can think about is stocks. He's the type of person that we have stories about skipping his way into the office in Omaha. And so with this much cash on hand for a guy like Warren Buffett, who absolutely is obsessed with his career and arguably everyone thought would work to the day he died, similar to his longtime friend and co-founder Charlie Munger, who then died around 98, 99. I can't remember the exact year he was or how old he was when he died. However, Warren Buffett has said he plans to step down from Berkshire Hathaway by the end of 2025. This is sending ripples through the market right now. People are like, holy crap, there's a new person at the helm. What are they going to do? Are they going to be able to carry on the legacy of Berkshire Hathaway? Are they going to do well navigating future market environments with a lot of volatility or a lot of selling? Are they going to have cash on hand through the next year? What are they going to do? And more importantly, who is this Greg Abel guy? Well, the Wall Street Journal covered him in this short article and video. So we're going to show you this video directly from the Wall Street Journal to get a better understanding of who this guy is and whether or not he's pro-crypto at all.
Everyone knows who Warren Buffett is, but people who are really in the know are talking about this man. For many years, investors had wondered who would follow Buffett as CEO of Berkshire. That question was answered in 2021 when Charlie Munger let slip at the Berkshire annual meeting that Abel was the pick. And all eyes were on him recently when he took the stage at Berkshire's annual shareholder meeting in Omaha, Nebraska. Here's why everyone is talking about Greg Abel. Greg Abel is in his early 60s and has been at Berkshire for more than 2 decades. These days, he heads Berkshire's non-insurance operation. Buffett said that in his view, when Abel is CEO, he should also be in charge of Berkshire's capital allocation. That would mean that Abel would have ultimate responsibility both for Berkshire's many operating companies and for its famous stock portfolio. Berkshire Hathaway is so well known among U.S. businesses partly because its stock has outperformed the broader market by so much over the years. And they've been able to do this because Buffett invested in high-quality companies trading at reasonable prices, whether by acquiring them in full or investing in them in the stock market. As far as deal-making, Berkshire looks like it could head into its next chapter with a full war chest. Its stash of cash and equivalents has continued to rise in recent quarters and has been getting closer to $200 billion. Abel is highly regarded by shareholders who see him as a highly competent executive who's committed to preserving Berkshire's culture. After Abel's selection became public, Berkshire's stock did well. It may be that investors were happy to just have a better idea about what Berkshire's future would hold. And they think that Berkshire has such a great collection of businesses and such a strong balance sheet that it should perform well even when Buffett is no longer in charge.
Now, essentially, Abel has been with Berkshire Hathaway going back to 1999. So it's been about 26 years, but he's consistently performed well in their portfolio of companies at the helm. In other words, Buffett has said, Greg will be more successful than I have been. And if I said otherwise, my nose would grow. So there is a lot of confidence behind this man. And at the time of recording this video, you can see that the woman actually had less cash on their balance sheet. So it's increased tremendously since then, almost to the tune of another $150 billion. But the stock also rose upon that news, which leads me to believe that a lot of these insider investors or people in the know really have faith and confidence in Greg to make a good series of decisions with their cash on hand. So all I've heard is chatter about this new approach to investing or investing in other currencies than the United States dollars. Many people have been speculating that they're going to go into crypto because it's considered currency, or at least Bitcoin is, right? But at the end of the day, there is currently no credible evidence that Buffett actually plans to dive into Bitcoin. And by the way, I did do a lot of searching online. I went to all of the major LLMs, and all I could find was the fact that they're both now pretty agnostic when it comes to crypto. Buffett hasn't talked about it for quite a while. The last time he did was Rat Poison Squared. Everyone remembers that. But it's important to note that Buffett was also really late to Apple. And it's possible because Greg Abel has said nothing on crypto whatsoever, this could leave the door open for him to shift in strategy. As more nation states acquire Bitcoin, if Berkshire Hathaway and Greg, especially under his helm, were able to actually deploy a bit of that capital into Bitcoin, even if it was 1 to 5% of their portfolio or position, this would create a lot of confidence in the market among institutional investors who are disciples of Buffett and their approach. And if they did this with Bitcoin, you can bet your butt that they're also going to be creating for an environment where there's confidence in the entire crypto market. If Bitcoin starts to pump hard, believe me, Dogecoin, XRP, Solana, Chainlink, and all of your other major market cap cryptos will follow. So now what we're going to do is look at the charts on these cryptos. The reality is we can thoroughly expect more money is likely going to enter the space as exchange reserves have consistently been declining. In other words, people have been buying Bitcoin, removing it from exchanges. This has caused the price action to go a bit wild over the last 4 weeks or month straight up. Now, from a daily time frame, things are also looking pretty bullish. I mentioned at one point in time that we are actually in the bull zone anywhere above around $95,000, and Bitcoin has not only done that, but exceeded my expectations, pumping up to $97,800. Currently, we're seeing a slight retrace, but no real major sell pressure, especially even on the daily time frame. You can see that sell pressure has been very, very weak into this uptrend. In other words, I was consistently calling for a break above, and this was for our university members right here at $88,700. Any break above this range right here should take us to higher highs, and so far it has worked out really well. However, I would not like to see Bitcoin break below the lows of $92,000 to potentially $91,000, because that will take us back into the $88,000 range and would arguably be a new lower high in a longer term downtrend. As you can see here, we pumped really hard, almost to a T, to that 0.71 range on the fib scale. So anything below here and anything arguably even just below that $93,000 range is going to be danger territory for Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto market, because the reality is we had quite a strong support right here that could potentially just be a resistance and a massive bull trap before the next leg down, which would lead me to believe that Berkshire Hathaway is actually preparing for a stock market crash of epic proportions. And if that did happen, even with a bit of a decoupling, we would likely see another bottom here at $74,000 or lower to $62,000, which would be my major range of support and a great buy zone for something like Bitcoin. So it's important to pay attention to what happens here with Bitcoin over the upcoming week. Do we hang out in this range for a while and see some support at $93,000? I'm happy above the $95,000 range, but anything below 93 starts to become dangerous, because this would be our resistance and a bull trap. Again, this is the perfect little fib retrace to trap people into the move before the next leg down. So I'm not too excited about what I'm seeing right here. I would like to see it hold right now. I'm not saying we're in danger territory yet, but we're very close, considering this is technically an intermediate term downtrend. And this could just be the next lower high, I should say, before the leg down. That said, XRP, for whatever reason, has consistently been holding up stronger. Definitely above that $2.05 range down to $1.95 range at max. However, because it's performed so freaking well through the end of year into the start of this year, here's the problem. We have a lot of room to decline if we break below the $2 range again. So anything above $2, still, in decent, bull territory, although it has been lagging Bitcoin. I would like to see it stay above this range, and I would like to see Bitcoin put in some new highs before I go all in on something like this, because it has a lot of room to decline. And it doesn't mean that it's not been a strong performer and it hasn't held up better. It's just the fact that right now, we were actually seeing a potential breakout right here, and now we're just seeing it sell off yet again right at the resistance of this trend line. So this is technically an intermediate term downtrend alongside Bitcoin, and again, it's going to follow Bitcoin if Bitcoin dumps really hard. Now, something like Dogecoin is quite interesting. As you can see here, we have a series of higher highs and higher lows. When it rallies really hard, like it did back here in March 20th of 2024, and yet again in December of 2024. But then it sells off really hard as well. In other words, there's just a lot of profit taking because people made money buying throughout these ranges. That said, we have quite a strong support going all the way back to October of 2023, and we're currently in this range. So the reality is, let's just assume Bitcoin dumps really hard because it's already made a retrace of its major prior move right here. It's likely that we're going to see some support even on a dump down to 8 or 9 cents. In other words, if it dumps to about 8 to 9 cents, I'd be a major buyer of Dogecoin. Now, that said, I am currently dollar cost averaging something like this because I don't care if I get it between 17 cents down to 9 cents. At the end of the day, an average of 12 cents is still pretty good, considering I think over the long run, it's probably going to go back to its prior all-time high of 74 cents and arguably even up to at least $1. So imagine you're getting an average of 14 cents, 13.5 cents, and it pumps to $1. You're still going to be really happy. And because we don't know whether or not we're going to continue trending up or whether the bottom is actually in or whether they're actually going to deploy a bit of capital into Bitcoin, which will follow into the rest of the crypto market over at Berkshire Hathaway. At the end of the day, any price down here is pretty solid considering you have a stupid amount of support. Whereas something like XRP right now, because it pumps so hard, you see that there's a lot of room to the downside and arguably at least to the $1.10 range, maybe even the dollar range. So it remains to be seen what happens here on a dump, but I would say at least $1.30 down to $1 is where your support would be if we break down below $2 one last time. Now, looking at something like Solana, very similar to XRP, we have seen quite a strong support right here at the prior range high going back to December of 2023. When we broke out, we were consistently supported and bounced for new highs. As you can see, the high actually came in here when Trump made the Trump token on the Solana network January 19th. But since that point in time, Solana broke down really hard. We're talking from $195 all the way down to less than $100. Since then, we've put in a new low below this range. And so here's the problem with Solana. Again, a lot of room to the downside. And because of this, we don't have any major supports up until about 50 to 60 bucks. So here's the problem. If we break back down to $120, and this would be our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ninth touch, 10th touch of this range, the more you touch a support or a resistance, the more likely it breaks down. And I could look at a lot of other key indicators that are showing me confluence, but at the end of the day, this is pretty straightforward, right? We have a major support right here. If we break back into this support at 120, things are not looking too good for Solana, especially with this much overhead resistance where we were consistently sold at 188 to even 160. So if I pull up that VRVP, you can see that there's a lot of trade volume and arguably resistance right here at about 140 bucks, which is exactly where Solana is trading right now. So it's going to be very hard for it to break above unless there's some major catalyst. But if there is none, and Berkshire Hathaway continues to remain bearish on the markets by sitting on a large cash stockpile and selling all of their stocks for cash, then it's likely that they know something is coming. So I'd be very cautious with something like Solana. It's not that it's not a great major layer one crypto that will likely flip Ethereum in the future. It's just that it might take longer and you might see some better opportunities to buy somewhere down here at like 60 to 50 bucks. And finally, let's look at Chainlink. So looking at Chainlink, I actually really like Chainlink. Very similar to something like Doge. We have a crazy amount of support right here from the $8 range all the way up to, I would say, about the $10 range. So between $8 and $10, and if I could grab the line tool, it would be quite nice. We have quite a bit of support. And as you can see here, we've already sold off those major highs from the prior move. So even if the market crashes and we see a lot of selling on these other cryptos, right, there's a lot of more downside risk on something like XRP and Solana because they pumped so hard. Whereas relatively speaking, and they've held up pretty well. Relatively speaking, though, on something like Dogecoin and Chainlink, it's not that they're not slower movers or, I would say, don't perform as well. It's the fact that we have a pretty strong trend line of support right here. And so if we break below the 11 range, we have so much support at $9 to $8 that I'm actually accumulating at this line, this trend, arguably right now, yes, but definitely more so at the trend line and even more so down here. So I'm going to weight my buys into the ranges if we see a breakdown. And if not, I'm still dollar cost averaging because this could have been the low. And so dollar dollar cost averaging would still leave me a lot of upside. So very little downside risk and a lot of upside potential on something that is good, like Chainlink, your major meme coin like Dogecoin, and generally speaking, these are really good plays. I think Chainlink and Dogecoin are relatively safe plays along